Hey, welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you, are these any good for the Pauper format or not? Most of the time they're not, but sometimes they are. All right, let's get on to our first one. It's Thorned Moloch, which is 2 and a red for a 2/2 lizard. It's got prowess, which means when you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And this creature has first strike as long as it's attacking. Those are some interesting abilities. Because first strike, that's just a good ability to begin with. And then it forces your opponents into questionable blocks and potentially really bad blocks. Because then when you have prowess, now you can play some instants or something and buff this creature's power, get the first strike going. Maybe it's even a buff spell to this guy, something that gives him a power boost. So you're giving him a power boost. He's getting another power boost from prowess, and then the first strike is going to help you out a lot here. The biggest problem is that it's 3 mana. We've seen prowess creatures before that have done okay in Pauper. In fact, some that have been too good and have had to be banned out of the format. But for 3 mana, the problem I have with prowess creatures at 3 mana and above, and honestly sometimes even 2 mana and above, is that you're spending a lot of cards already to get them on the table. Think about your hand, 7 cards. Now you're playing a land each turn, and you're drawing a card each turn. So those kind of offset. But then you're playing spells out of your hand. You're playing a creature. You're playing, I don't know, an artifact or something. And you're doing that for, let's say, turn 1, turn 2, and now this card on turn 3. So now potentially you only have 4 cards left in your hand, and maybe even fewer if you're double spelling on other turns. So how many cards do you have to actually get the prowess triggers multiple times, right? Like multiple times, one for this guy for a critical turn where you need to have a lot of spells being played, and then turn over turn when you know that you have to do this again, or you want to be able to do this again. And red does not have a bunch of good card draw. It has some good filtering with the discard 1, draw 2. Those can be nice, those spells. But you're rarely getting a bunch of extra cards in your hand with just red. So now you're having to splash with another color, probably blue if you're looking to put a lot of cards in your hand, but it's getting a little tougher, right? I think this is actually a kind of cool card. I do like it. I also like that it's a lizard. That's cool. But in terms of what kind of deck this could go in for Pauper, I don't really see it. I think this is a really cool limited card, probably a really cool cube card. But when it comes to the Pauper format, I think the format's a little too fast. I think there's enough removal that you probably just end up spending a bunch of spells to try to up this thing's prowess, and then somebody just removes it anyway. and now you feel like you spent a lot of mana and a lot of cards on something that didn't end up doing anything. And that's the real bummer. When you have a Monastery Swiftspear that has prowess and haste, like you get to put that on turn 1 and swing in. You get the opportunity cost for that is extremely low. And then if it gets removed, no big deal. It was 1 mana to you. But if you are able to keep it on the board and put more spells into it, that's why that card is so good, and that's why it was so good it got banned from the Pauper format. But these higher mana cost prowess creatures just don't quite cut it, even though they still have a lot of upside to them. We're going to give this a 3.3, and I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna think about it a lot, but I'm not gonna think about it to the point that I put it in a deck or anything like that. Liev Decree, Liev, whatever. Is 1 and a white for a sorcery. Detain up to 2 target creatures your opponents control. Until your next turn, those creatures can't attack or block, and their activated abilities cannot be activated. Detain is fine. You know, it's like stun counter plus because they also can't activate abilities. But stun, it's like stun. It's not exactly a stun counter because stun counters are tapping them. So that is that is kind of stopping most of their activated abilities if they're tap abilities anyway. But this doesn't tap them down. So if they wanted to tap them down for Convoke or for like a prismatic strands that's in the graveyard that they're flashing back, there's lots of things that you can still do with a creature that cannot attack or block or even use its activated abilities, but is untapped. Like there's still things. And so stun counters are in some ways better, and in some ways maybe a little worse. Either way, this is not a very useful card in Pauper. It does. I guess it gives you. It stops the creatures from blocking on your turn when you play. That's okay. And then it also stops them from attacking on the opponent's turn because it says until your next turn. So it is getting a little bit extra value out of there. And they can't use their abilities. It's okay. It's just kind of a stall tactic that's not really furthering your game plan. And I think that's kind of the problem with this. It's not fully removing the creature, and it's not moving your game plan forward. And I think that just kind of puts it into this, it's okay territory. And we'll give it a, it's okay score of 2.2. Moldering Carrick is 2, and Golgari, which is black and green, for a 3/3 zombie crocodile with trample and lifelink. It's just a fun card. Just a fun dude, right? He's a 4-mana 3/3 trample and lifelink. Those are pretty good abilities. You put more stuff on this guy, make him bigger and scarier. That's fun. But 4 mana for this is for a French vanilla creature, even though it's double French vanilla. Ooh, so fancy. Still not really anything to write home about it. It's a zombie. That might be useful to you. There are some zombie style decks in Pauper, but yeah, this is just a little too normal. You know, I think it would need better stats or a lower mana cost or something like that for people to pay attention. And if it were those things, it probably would be too good. So this is probably about where it has to be. And it ends up not being all that good. But it's cool. I like it. I do like it. We'll give it a 2.4. Youthful Knight is a classic card. For 1 and a white, you get a 2/1 Human Knight with First Strike. Originally from Stronghold, got that Rebecca Gay art to it. I was just actually looking at this 10th edition version today for another thing that I'm working on. Cool card. They should have just left the Rebecca art in. I don't need this art. I want this art. Oh, give me that. Look at that. It was perfect the way it was. Anyway, First Strike's a good ability. We talked about it with the lizard that we saw in the first card today. But First Strike's a solid ability, and both offensively and defensively, it actually scares the hell out of opponents to attack into something with First Strike. And so oftentimes you can just kind of get away with putting a First Striker down and and just putting that in the opponent's head. This is not amazing, though. It is a knight, so if I suppose it could go into some kind of Orzhov knight deck. I still don't think we quite have that in Pauper yet. We don't have enough pieces to really make that great. And again, we're talking about a French vanilla creature here. Although, I think the stat line is better for this French vanilla creature. 2 mana, 2 power. When it's got First Strike, you kind of don't care about the toughness. Although, if somebody, uses Electrickery or something, they can easily take this guy out. And so the 1 toughness can matter. But, again, you paid 2 mana for it. It's not a huge deal. It's not like you put a big investment in it. But I think for 2 mana in white, you can probably find a lot better creatures to play than this. So unless you are able to find some kind of synergy with knights, which again I do not think is there at the moment, this guy probably just doesn't have a place. And honestly, he probably doesn't even have a place when there's more knight support. I think we just also have better knights. Let's go with a 2 for Youthful Knight. Well, no, no, I'm going to give him better than a 2. I'm going to give him a 2.5. I think he's he's a bad but also solid card. There's an interesting distinction to make there. Sunspire Gatekeepers is 3 and a white for a 2/4 human soldier. When this creature enters, if you control 2 or more gates, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So Gates, definitely a deck that we see in Pauper. There's a number of different Gates builds that use lots of different kinds of creatures, and generally I would say they're mostly white, right? There's like Naya Gates, and I mean the big one is Azorius Gates. It's like your classic Caw Gates, but you see Gates in a lot of different colors, but white is generally one of the colors that gets played in Gates decks, but not for this guy. you know it is in some ways 4 mana for 4/6 worth of power toughness. That's a pretty good deal, especially when part of that has vigilance. But it's this card is basically just vanilla, and then you have the 2/2 knight with vigilance, and that's okay. If this thing had the vigilance instead, I guess it'd be slightly better. I don't. This is not the reason you play Gates. There's a lot of other very good reasons you play Gates, and Sunspire Gatekeepers is not one of them. We will give it just a 2, I think. Dragonstorm Globe is 3 mana for an artifact. Each dragon you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. All right, the 3 mana rock part. Whatever. We see lots of 3 mana rocks that never get played, that don't get played pretty much anywhere. They don't really get played in Commander. They don't get played in Limited, or I guess they get played in Limited. They don't see any play in Standard, and they really don't see any play in Pauper either. This one I have actually seen a time or two, because it's the most niche of niches. But there is a Dragons deck you can make in Pauper that isn't terrible. Think of some of the common dragons that you have available to you. There's a card called Reckless Barbarian that is able to sacrifice itself for a couple red, and it only costs a couple red, so that's kind of a free spell in a way, which can be useful if you're doing some kind of stormy shenanigans. There's the Segu Wildlings, which are used all the time. The dragon decks that I've seen are mostly Gruul based. Sometimes you can throw a little blue in there for some teamer action, but they're mostly Gruul based. There's the one that makes treasure tokens when it comes into play and when it dies. That's not too bad. And then there's the other Tarkir Dragonstorm one with the Omen ability, the red one, the Feral something, Storm Shrieker, I think. And that's one of those discard 1, draw 2 cards, but also has a dragon attached to it. So there are some halfway decent dragons. There's a Fang Dragon also, which is kind of a little bit of a board wipe. It does, I think, 1 damage to each creature an opponent controls on the adventure side, and then it's a big dragon on the other side. So there are, and an Avenging Hunter, probably the best one, the 5/4 Trampler that gets you the initiative. So there are a number of dragon cards that are halfway useful in Pauper. Then there's also Breath Weapon. That's 2 damage to each non-dragon creature. If you have a bunch of dragons on your side, it's a one-sided board wipe. Those are all good things. So this being a little bit of ramp, and Gruul decks don't mind a little bit of ramp to get to their big bodies, but also every dragon that you're playing, from the tiniest ones to the big ones, now get a little power toughness boost. And that makes all those cards even better. Imagine getting an Avenging Hunter that was a 6/5. Okay. Get the Feral Stormshrieker, which is a 4/4 instead of a 3/3. Wow. That's pretty good power and toughness for the mana that you're paying. The opportunity cost, though, is having to play this card, which I don't think is all that good. When you're paying 3 mana to kind of do nothing that turn, because you're playing this, and I guess you do have 1 mana available to you from this, but I don't particularly think this is all that great. I even tried to build a Gruul Dragons deck in Pauper, and I ended up leaving this out. I found other cards that were a little cheaper, a little better, and I rarely often needed that extra power toughness boost because dragons are dragons. They're still generally pretty big to start with, and I just don't think the counters were all that necessary. They're still nice though. They're still nice. I'm going to give this a 3.6. And that seems maybe a little high, but I think it's actually okay. I think this is a halfway decent card. All right. What do we have next? It's Vesper Ghoul. For 2 and a black, you get a 1/1 zombie druid. You can tap it and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color. This is real bad. This is real bad. We just saw a 3 mana rock last time, and now we see a 3 mana dork, but also costs you life. It is a zombie, but also it's a 3 mana 1/1. This sucks. I hate this, and I love Dissension. I love the original Ravnica block, but this guy's garbage. I'm gonna give him a 1.4, and I think the 0.4 is really just that he can make mana for you. He is a mana dork, but that's a really bad mana dork. Maybe in something where you have to pay. I don't know. I wouldn't play him anywhere. Renowned Weaponsmith is a pretty decent card. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 human artificer. You can tap it to add double colorless. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Or you can pay a blue and tap and search your library for a card named Heartpiercer Bow or Vial of Dragonfire. Reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. It should be known these are also both common cards, so you can tutor up actual common cards. We'll have to take a look at these 2 cards a little bit more just to see if this is actually worth it. It is nice that this has been downshifted to common because it kind of sucked to have this thing in uncommon. You wouldn't be able to play it, and then you wouldn't be able to grab the pieces that it grabs. For Pauper at least, it still works for limited, but kind of a nice downshift. Anyway, let's talk about this. 2 mana for a 1/3. That's not awful stats. You can block a decent amount of stuff with that. Tapping, getting 2 mana, even just for artifact spells. There's plenty of artifacts you play in Pauper. Grixis Affinity and things like that. Like this just pays for I was going to say Neil Spellbomb, but it does more than that. An Eager Wellspring. This just pays for an Eager Wellspring. This just pays for a Lembas on its own. That's kind of cool. And also activating the ability, so you can even pay and crack the Lembas. That's also good. These are all good things. You can crack clues with this guy. Like that's great. And then it also does find you cards. This is card advantage. That's awesome. It just will find you cards. It will tutor, tutors only 2 specific cards, but if you have 4 copies of each of those cards in your deck, this thing kind of draws you 8 cards. Over potentially can draw you up to 8 cards over the course of a game. That's rad. That's really rad. Now, are these cards any good? Let's take a look. Let's open these in some new links. See, Vial of Dragonfire. It is 2 mana for an artifact, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice it, and it deals 2 damage to target creature. That's not that great. Now, you do have the Weaponsmith who can tap to put this down and tap to pay for it. It's not great removal. You're spending 4 mana to do 2 damage to a creature, not even to a player. That's pretty bad. I think we've actually looked at this card before, and we thought it was pretty bad. But when you can tutor it up, maybe. Still no, but maybe. What's the other one? Is the bow any better? Heartpiercer Bow, 2 mana to play. So again, the Weaponsmith can help you cast this for not free, but he taps to tap and pay for this itself. Artifact equipment. When a equipped creature attacks, this equipment deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. Not each. That would be way better. And it equips for 1. This is better than the last one, I suppose. You let's say you tap your weaponsmith to go grab this card. Then on the next turn, you can pay 2, play it, pay 1 to equip it to the weaponsmith. Probably better on something else, but you could equip it to the weaponsmith. And now you've got a 1/3 that can attack in okay because it can take some damage. And you get to ping a creature. You get to ping a fairy or something. It's not good. I'm just trying here, you know? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this also used to be uncommon, which is also not great for Pauper, but it's common now. Anyway, I honestly, I think you can just ignore all that text and just stick with the artifact mana dork, and he's okay. We have a decent amount of artifact mana dorks in Pauper, and most of them will make a single blue. Sometimes they'll make a colorless, but this guy makes 2 colorless, and 2 mana. 2 mana can make a big difference in Pauper. You know, this turns your Pinnacle Kill Ship from a 7 mana thing into a 5 mana thing. It can really cut down on the cost of some of your cards. There's potential for this guy. I think he probably gets discounted more knowing that his second ability ends up not being all that good. But honestly, there's still things you could just do with having cards in your hand. So this guy being able to put more cards in your hand, maybe it's more stuff that you can discard. You know, if there's something about revealing artifacts from your hand, this is a guy that can put artifacts into your hand. If this is something about discarding an artifact or an artifact going to your graveyard, this guy can help you get the artifacts to be able to do that. Even if it's just getting artifacts to put out on the field to then sacrifice to something else, this guy can help you do that. Again, these are not amazing things that this guy does, but I think you put it together and you see that this guy has a little bit more value than you might expect. Being able to draw an extra card each turn and guaranteeing that card's an artifact, even if it's not a very good artifact, is something that some decks probably would like. And yeah, they got to play some worse cards in their deck, and if you draw one of those cards instead of tutoring it with this guy, then you do feel bad, but I think he's got some upside. I'm going to give him a 3.7. No, I'm going to do even better. I'm going to give him a 3.9. 3.9. I think Renowned Weaponsmith is okay. Lightning Shrieker. Hey, here's a dragon. I don't know if it's a dragon you want to use, but it is a dragon. It's 4 and a red for a 5/5 dragon with flying, trample, and haste. All those things sound amazing. What's the drawback? Well, at the beginning of your end step, this creature's owner shuffles it into their library. That's a little rough. That is a little rough. I'll tell you one thing. This is not helpful for Pauper, but of the Claw, Zirlin, look at this guy. So you pay the 3, you search your library for a dragon, you put it onto the battlefield, then it gains haste, then you exile it at the beginning of the next end step. But what if for the Lightning Shrieker, this ability, you put it on the stack first and it goes back into your library? And then you can tutor up for him again and again and again every single turn. That's kind of cool. I've been considering making a Zerlin commander deck, and I don't really want to pay $10 for a card if I don't have to, especially when it's a card that's not particularly good. 5 mana 3/4, but that's neither here nor there. I just really like Zerlin in the Claw, and I think this is a cool interaction that you can do. A 5/5 flying trample haste every turn is not too bad, and he guarantees you always have a dragon to go search for as well until somebody kills it. But that's a fun little thing. In Pauper, nah. I mean, you gotta think of it this way. This is kind of like a ball lightning in Pauper. Ball lightning is really cool, but it's not. It's never been Pauper playable. But a 6/1 trample haste. But this guy flies. So you're probably getting in for a good 5 damage, but instead of it being sacrificed and put into your graveyard at the end of turn, this guy goes back into your library, where you can potentially draw him again and use it again. It's not awful. It's not. It's really not. But when you're paying 5 mana to do 5 damage, that's just a lightning axe, you know? Lightning axe. Oh wait, no, not lightning axe. That's a lava axe. That's right, lava axe. That's what I was thinking. Yes, 5 damage to target player. So what would you rather have? I mean, I guess this goes to the graveyard, so this guy is potentially better, but this guy can also be removed. I don't think you should play it, but I do think he's interesting. It's kind of fun to have a repeatable, the repeat part is a little tougher to get to, but it is technically a repeatable 5 damage that you can get. Interesting. Maybe you have, this is a terrible idea, but maybe you have like a cascade deck, and the only things that can cascade, that your guys can cascade into, is this guy. So you'll guarantee you get yourself a 5/5, and then it goes back into your library, and then you can cascade for it again. You'll always have cascade fodder. And these are not good things. So don't listen to me. I'm just spitballing. We'll give it a. I'm gonna give it a 2.4. And then just go. No, this is not a particularly good card, but it does set my brain alight, and I do like that part of it. This is our last official card of the day. I was just looking at this card too. Walker of the Grove is 6 and double green for a 7/7 elemental, and when this creature leaves the battlefield, create a 4/4 green elemental creature token. It also has Evoke for 4 and a green. So originally from Morningtide. So the idea here is that you evoke it, and you can evoke it on an earlier turn, and you get a 4/4, and that's not great power and toughness for the mana that you put in. It's also vanilla, and that's kind of bad. And then if you did pay the full 8 mana, you get a 7/7 that's also vanilla, and that's also not very good. But we have seen with Mole Drifter where you evoke it and then you blink it, and then when it comes back into play, you get the cards again, and you also get the creatures. So imagine you do a similar thing with Walker of the Grove. You evoke this for 5, you blink it, it now leaves the battlefield, so it makes a 4/4, it comes back into the battlefield, and it's a 7/7, and you don't have to worry about sacrificing it anymore because you've blinked it. It's a new instance of the creature. It doesn't remember the evoke part. So now you've got 11 power for 5 mana plus whatever you use to blink it. If you use an Ephemerate, and then 6 mana. And then if this thing ever dies, then you get another 4/4. Or if you use that Ephemerate like we talked about, you use the Ephemerate again on the next turn when it what's it called? Rebound? Retrace? No, it's not retrace. It's rebound. When it rebounds, you can do this again, and now you'll have the 4/4 from the first time. You'll have the 4/4 from this time of leaving the battlefield. Then this comes back into the battlefield. So now you've got 2 4/4s and a 7/7. And if your 7/7 ever dies, you'll get another 4/4 or leaves the battlefield, even if it gets exiled or something. Now we're kind of talking. But are you going to spend that many cards and that much mana on this? Again, these are all vanilla creatures, and these are not bad creatures at that point when you're able to get that much value in it. I could see this happening, but you kind of would just rather do it with a Mole Drifter, right? Like, what if I could have the 2/2 flyer and draw 4 cards? That's better, right? And then the Ephemerate happens again, and you draw 2 more cards after that. I think the cards are probably better than the bodies. But I think you should consider this at least if you are making a Selesnya deck that has Ephemerate in it, and I don't know what decks there are that really do that or need that or can comply with that. But if you are making that kind of a deck, I think maybe you should kind of consider this a little bit. Give it a look at least and think about it. Let's give this guy a 3, just a straight up 3. And you know what? Let's do a bonus card because we basically always do a bonus card. It's Oil Gorger Troll for 3 and double green. It's a 3/4 Phyrexian Troll Warrior, and when this creature enters, you gain 3 life. Then if you control a permanent with an oil counter on it, you draw a card. All right, 5 mana for a 3/4, not very good. You gain the 3 life, that's okay, but there's plenty of other cards, especially in green, that will gain you more than 3 life, or at least give you a better rate on that 3 life than this guy does. So that part's not all that good. And then if you have a permanent with an oil counter, you draw a card. Oil counters, there are lots of cards that use oil counters. Let's you know what? Let's take a quick look. We'll just say oil counter, and we'll say Pauper, and we'll see what we get. There's 16 cards, and they're all from Phyrexia LB1, because that's where the mechanic came from. So let's specifically look at green cards, because this troll is green, and now there's only 3, or 4. Sorry, these are alphabetical, not by color. This guy comes into play with a couple oil counters. This can put an oil counter on itself. This guy comes into play with oil counters, and these are all under the under cost from what from Gorger Troll is, so you can curve into them, I guess. Are these cards worth playing to get that one drawn card, paying the 5 mana for it? And I'm gonna say I don't think so. None of these guys are all that good. This guy does kind of ramp you and is a 1/2 at least. That's not the worst thing, I guess. And maybe there's some other cards. If you splash into other colors, you can, like this guy. This guy's 1 mana and he starts with 3 oil counters on it. You play him early and then eventually you get to the troll. Maybe. I think generally this is not the best of deals. But they tried. They tried real hard to make it a decent deal. 3/4, 3 life, and drawing a card. Those would be pretty good things. But I think this hoop is just one I don't particularly want to jump through. And so let's give it its power toughness. Let's give it a 3.4 and say you almost got there, but not quite. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this one. We will see you next time for more Common Knowledge.